Hi, this is Paul. Welcome back to Geeks Love Dogs. And I just paid my bills, took out my trash, and I'm rushing around to make a video, so it must be Monday, and it must be the good, the bad, and the books. For April 28th, 2025. This is where I talk about what I've read, what I'm reading, and what I'm going to read, and what's up with the channel for the past week and what's coming up. So let's talk about books, and let's start with what I've read. And let's start with my Kindle. What I finished was I finally got through Knock Knock by S.P. Miskowski. This is a Southern Gothic style story that actually takes place in rural Washington instead of the South, but it still has that feel. If you're a fan of things like Blackwater by Michael McDowell or Witching Hour by Anne Rice, this might be up your alley, except it's a much more watered down, more straight to the point version. Whereas Blackwater has 6 thin books to draw out the story, and Witching Hour uses hundreds and hundreds of pages to pad it. This is condensed down to one book, less than 300 pages. There are apparently sequels to it, but it's not something I'm going to look for. So the basic synopsis is you have 3 young girls who are best friends in the 60s in backwoods Washington state. They overhear someone talking about their horrible pregnancies and vow never to ever get pregnant. And in order to enforce that pact, they go off into the woods and perform a ritual in order to bond them in this idea. Well, something follows them home, as will happen in these stories, and you follow them as they grow up into adulthood, and inevitably the pact fails, and their children are then part of this curse. It's very understated. There's not a lot going on. It's more of a creepy horror story. There's a few moments of action and horrific events, but overall, it's a very slow-paced, slow-burn story as you follow these girls in what would be a Southern Gothic style of horror. Like I said, think Blackwater or Witching Hour by Anne Rice, but a much more condensed, much more straight-to-the-point version. And it was okay. It was average. Like I said, I'm not going to go get the sequels and find out what happens. I went there, I read it, it was okay. It was just okay. I don't think it's in print anymore, so you probably won't be able to find it. Luckily, I have a huge backlog of ebooks that I have backed up, that I was able to read these, and I have some others that thankfully I do too, but I wouldn't go looking for it. But I'm also not sad that I read it. I mean, it was fine. I'd say if you're into the Southern Gothic thing, you'd probably like it, then maybe check it out. All right, that's what I finished electronically. Let's talk about paper. So I finished a reread of Burning Chrome by William Gibson. In case you don't know, Burning Chrome is a collection of short stories that is one of the 3 pillars, the tripod of books that support the 1980s cyberpunk movement, along with Neuromancer and Snow Crash. Some of these were actually written before Neuromancer, some of them after. Of course, the quality of story varies, as will any short story collection. My personal favorite are the last 2 in the book, Dogfight and Burning Chrome, the title track, so to speak. But for this book, this was an establishment book. This is when the beginnings of cyberpunk were just starting to be fleshed out. So most of what you find in this book is more atmosphere. It's Gibson and a couple other authors that he co-writes with in here, showing and developing the feel of the world. You have an image in your mind when you see cyberpunk. You'll know it, what it is, and you'll think about it when you hear the words cyberpunk. You have an image that's formed. Like I said, when you see a cyberpunk image, you know it. But these stories are the ones that created that image, that put that feel out there. That is the standard by which cyberpunk began. And a lot of these stories in the book are very reminiscent of that. Some of them really even almost feel like slam poetry as you read through, as he's reciting a plethora of visual cues and images for you to build a world in your head with. The stories sometimes are secondary to this atmosphere, to this feeling he's trying to generate, this imagery he's trying to place out there, as I think they were, as creators at this time, trying themselves to create a world that did not exist, or there was very little out there about. There were authors who touched upon it, but very few will argue that Gibson and Stevenson and a few others like Williams and Swanick and some of the others were the ones that really created cyberpunk as we know it, who pushed it to the forefront. Now, I'm going to say that they got that feel from the famous anime movie Akira. I think that has a lot to do with where the cyberpunk movement came from, where these authors got their ideas from. But that's just a personal opinion. And there are others. I'm not going to remember every single one of them. And there are others who contributed to it who should probably be recognized. I just don't have that in front of me. And feel free to talk about it in the comments, because I know there are others out there who deserve their day. But I feel like about this book, the same way I do a lot of Gibson's early stuff, and Neuromancer specifically, which is a book I've reread multiple times and still can't really put my finger on. It's more about the atmosphere. It's more about the world building. It's about how it makes you feel as you immerse yourself in this world that is being built before your eyes at this time. And it gives you that sense of creation and invention if you understand this is where it all began. So the stories in this will fall secondary. Although, like I said, by the end with Dogfight, I really enjoyed, and Burning Chrome, I really enjoyed. And the first one, Johnny Mnemonic, which was made into a pretty bad movie, but everybody kind of knows it because of that, and Keanu Reeves. But anyway, this is a kind of book that you read to immerse yourself in the feel of. Like I said, some of it even sounds just like, as you're reading through, feels like you're reading slam poetry. And you have to know that going in and accept the feel that you're getting reading this book, and not expect to be taking on this adventure and journey in storytelling and plot versus almost a psychedelic acid trip of creation and invention of the cyberpunk genre. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm not being too weird about it, but that's how it comes across to me. Think of like an old Pink Floyd laser show where you're just sitting back and letting it wash over you and being immersed in the feeling and the imagery that's put before you. And you'll have what early cyberpunk, early William Gibson and Burning Chrome is like. I did finish One Punch Man, Volume 29. Like I said, with this and My Hero Academia, I've just been getting more and more bored with it because, well, at the beginning, it was a lot of fun. There was plot progression and character progression. I've gone reading like a year of these with the same fight nonstop in both those. So I'm getting a little tired and a little burnt out. And I wish there was more character development, more story, and they'd get away from this one long, never-ending fight in both of these. So I'm going to have to move on to other stories soon so I can get some good storytelling and plots. So, but I did finish it. I also pulled this out to read. I picked it up at a shop, at a used bookstore, and I had an idea for something I want to do, so I read this. This is Too Sweet to Die, a John Easy mystery. In fact, number 2, it's the only one I have, by Ron Goulart. He's a detective, and I don't know if you know Ron Goulart. Usually he writes weird sci-fi. In this case, he was writing a detective novel, obviously. I'm not going to give too much on this because I have an idea on a video I might want to try, but basically he's an LA detective who's hired by a commercial director to find his leading woman who disappeared, and it basically follows him as he goes searching for this missing girl. Standard detective stuff. There's some stuff in there I'd like to discuss more deeply, but like I said, I'm thinking about doing a certain kind of video coming up and including this into that. I'll get more into that as I figure out how to do that. I definitely have some mixed feelings about this, and think maybe Goulart should stick to his weird sci-fi. But like I said, hoping to do a certain kind of video coming up on Ron Goulart, and I'll get more into that maybe later. In any case, don't really recommend this, even if you're, or I should say probably, especially if you're a fan of old detective novels or old detective shows. I don't think this is going to do much for you if you're somebody who's experienced in this genre, because it's, well, let's put it this way, there's a lot better out there that you could be reading. And like I said, I'll get to that more if I do that video. But anyway, oops, I'm always throwing or dropping stuff, aren't I? I'm not even clumsy. It's just because I'm on the camera. All right, and finally, I finished Pen Pal, a novel by Dothan Auerbach. This is supposed to be a horror novel. For me, I don't really consider it horror exactly, as there's not a lot of horror in it. I'd say it feels more like a thriller written by a horror author. I want to say it's creepy and atmospheric. It's definitely got some creepy moments. It's only 5 chapters, and it's actually a really quick read. It runs about, let's see, I don't want to give anything away, so be careful with it. 240 pages or so, and it does read really quick, I said it's 5 chapters. The first chapter is your standard build up, your character introductions, etc. It was fine. Second chapter was really creepy, and the way it ended, it really had me interested and excited. Third chapter did something that really bothered me. So not trying to be a snobbish writing critic or anything like that, but there's something that if you've ever gone to writing classes or read a writing book that you're told not to do. They will use specific examples of this happens, don't do this. And in the third chapter, he kind of does this, and it just made me roll my eyes and groan. And it kind of took me out of the story a bit. And it might not bother you if you haven't read a lot, or maybe even if you're very forgiving to things like this, it won't bother you, but it took me out of the story for a bit. So I went back in anyway to chapter 4 and 5, and it was fine. I mean, overall, I enjoyed the book. The ending landed about how you'd expect if you've read through the story. It was enjoyable. It was sad. I want you to understand this book is very depressing, very dark, and you're not going to come out of this book, no matter what happens, feeling happy and lighthearted. So be prepared, especially if you're one of those people who's very sensitive about what you read, knowing that you're going to have some emotional hangover, whether you like the book or not. It's very creepy, very atmospheric. It's in a unique storytelling style. And I said when I talked about it originally that it was very controversial in their people's opinion of it and how much they liked it and didn't like it. And I get that totally. You could come out of this book and absolutely love it. And I'd be like, yeah, I get it. You could read this book and be like, oh God, I hated it. And I'm like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. So this is going to be a very personal you book. I'm going to say if you're into creepy thriller horror, that you go check it out for yourself, because you may like it. It's not a bad book. I don't think it's a bad book. It's very uniquely done. It has different style that he approached the story to, and I appreciate that. I'm always looking for someone who takes a chance and does something different. Just know that if you're one of those people who's going to be generally upset by a dark, sad story, that this will hit home, and it might not be for you. But overall, I'd say give it a shot. I don't even want to talk about the story because the whole thing is kind of anything I'd say is going to be kind of spoilery. And I think you should go in blind. I'll give you enough to know. Yes, pen pal is an appropriate name for it. And it's about children. The entire book's told from the point of view of the adult telling a story about his childhood, looking back on it. And it's a one character point of view, and all the stuff that happens in here is happening to children. And it's not a lot. I mean, if you're going in going, oh, I don't want to hear, it's not a whole bunch of children being slaughtered or anything, but there are some moments that would affect you if child harm and child fear get to you. So just be wary of that. I'm just, letting you know, just in case you have those triggers, you have to be responsible for them. The writer did his job. If you don't like it, don't read it. That's all. I'm kind of torn. I got to admit, I've been thinking about it a lot since. So, I mean, that's a good thing. I definitely didn't hate it. I definitely wouldn't put it in my favorite books of the month or the year or ever, whatever. It's worth a read. I'd say if you're on the fence, get it from the library, borrow it, something like that. And those are the 5 things I finished over the past 7 days. So let's move on to what I'm currently reading. I did start the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles IDW Collection Volume 2. Not far into that, but I'm sure I'll be done with it by the end of the week if I put my effort into it, put some time into it. It is a pretty hardy graphic novel. So anyway, I'm going to get back to that. And I'm also currently reading another Ron Goulart book, Suicide Inc. Now, I'm halfway through. It's less than 200 pages. Should be able to finish it by the end of the week also. And the other book I already finished. I said it was a Ron Goulart book. And I said I'm thinking about a certain kind of video for this. It's one of the reasons I picked this up. And like I said, I'm halfway through. And these little weird-ass characters on the front here, they only appear so far in the first 3 pages of the book. Although other creatures of their species do show up randomly as cameos throughout the book. It's basically about 2 characters, Cruz and Smith, who are abducted by a robot for a mission for a company called Whistler. They're not given much choice of the matter, but they don't seem to fight it much, so, I don't know. Convenient, I guess. And they're sent off on a mission to find these missing children from this program, even though they're not children anymore. It's kind of weird and very sparsely explained. So I don't have a lot to go on. I'm hoping by the time I finish it, I'll have a lot more to talk about. Like I said, I'm reading some Goulart books. I'm going to try to do a video on him, and we'll see after I get through reading them if I can manage to pull enough together to do it. But we'll see. But yeah, that is what I'm currently reading, along with I am reading on ebook and audio Blackwater by Michael McDowell. I'm through it's all 6 books in one collection. I'm just reading straight through. I've finished more than the first book, so this one might take me a little while. I won't be done before the end of the month, so that's going to go over into next month with my e-reading, just so you know. If you're looking for some comment on that, I don't have a lot to give you. I'm enjoying it so far. Interesting story. So what's it about? Basically, it's a Southern Gothic horror story. Turn of the century, 1900, early 1900s. Takes place in Perdido, Alabama. There's a flood that destroys a great portion of the town or damages a huge swath of the town. It's an enormous flood, 18 feet of water. And one of the big shots in town, the Caskey family, who owns one of the 3 big lumber mills, it's a lumber town, is searching through the town in his boat when he finds a girl in a hotel room who's been there for several days, and she's obviously very odd, strange that she survived, and she's just fine sitting in a hotel room all by herself on the 2nd floor. And they save her, and she inserts herself into the family, and there's obviously something weird about her, and you'll find out as you go reading it what those things consist of, even if right away you don't know what or who she is or what she's doing. And you follow her as she inserts herself into the family, grows with the family, and time passes. Again, this is like similar to an Anne Rice Witching Hour kind of book where you're following a family history, but instead of the witches and demons in Witching Hour, this is something else entirely. I'm about more than a 1/6 of the way through it. I'm past the first book, and I'm really enjoying it. I did read the first book once years ago and wanted to go back, and I never did. And once I started this again, I didn't really remember much of anything about it, which is good, which I'm glad for. But so far, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm going to continue through, and I'm probably only going to get better. So it's a good book, and I'll get back to you on that when I have more. I just flubbed all over myself trying to get that out, didn't I? Now getting to what I will read. So coming up this week, I'm going to finish these. Hopefully I'll be able to finish them maybe tonight. Going forward, I'm not going to give you too much because my TBR video should come out Wednesday, hopefully. And I'm not sure I'm going to do the TBR game. I've been getting a lot of compliments of people who love it, and thank you so much. I put a lot of effort into it, so I appreciate that. But every once in a while, I want to switch things up, keep things fun for me, make sure I'm reading stuff that I want to read and not just being randomly picked for me. So I'm going to possibly do something different for that. I don't even know yet, and it's in 2 days, so I'll have to figure it out pretty dang quick. So I'm not going to give any much away about what I'm reading, because you'll have to watch that video to see what's coming up. But if things go well with Suicide Inc. after I read the Joe Easy book by Goulart and this by Goulart, I might try and get through this book by Goulart too and do a video talking about all 3 of these different style books by Goulart. Maybe just try and, just put something down about him and see if anybody's interested. He's got a lot of books out there. He's fairly famous if you're into old school paperback stuff. But I'm going to try and if I can get through these tonight, I'll start that tomorrow, and hopefully next week be able to do a video that encompasses those 3 Goulart books talking about him. And I hope that's something you'd be interested in, because I'm experimenting, trying something new, which I'm going to continue to do. I have some other ideas. But this week, this is what I'm going to work on. And if you want to know what else, you're going to have to show up for the TBR game. Which brings me to channel stuff. This was book haul week on the channel, as I actually put out 3 book haul videos in the past week, along with last week's The Good, the Bad, and the Books. So if you haven't checked them out, check them out. That was last week. So this week, we have this video, of course. And then, like I said, Wednesday, I'm going to do my TBR video, which will lay out what I'm going to read for the next month. And I'm going to try and do a Marvelous Mayhem halfway to Halloween month kind of video. So, like I said, I haven't figured out all the details yet, but I want to do something a little different than the TBR game. Sorry, I will be back to the TBR game. If I don't do it this week, if I decide to work this slightly differently for the month, then it will be back, though, I promise. And then Friday will be the monthly wrap-up for April, where I wipe the slate clean of everything we've done in April and officially move on to May. That's that. Going forward in May, though, I have some new ideas, some other things I'm going to do and try. There will, of course, be at least one paperback book haul halfway through the month, maybe. and at the end of the month, the regular book haul, standard book haul, because I keep swearing I'm not going to buy any more books. I'm not going to go to the used bookstore, but I've already went out this weekend and bought another bag of books. So there will be a used paperback book haul that I just want to time properly. So a couple weeks from now, be there for that. If you care what I watched, because sometimes I like to talk about that, I did finally start Daredevil Born Again. I'm a huge Daredevil fan. One of my favorite superheroes, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Moon Knight. I've talked about it before. So I finally got to start it. Great start. I'm 3 episodes in. Having fun with it. Can't wait to get back to it. And also this week, since last week I actually got my video shot really early, I had more time to sit and read and watch movies. And when I watch movies during the week, I usually do it in like 15-minute increments. I did actually watch some of the Star Trek movies. They're free on YouTube. They're not illegal or anything like that. They're actually YouTube movies that you can watch with ads for free. And they have them like all up there. I watched like, I don't know, 2, 3 in Undiscovered Country, 2, 4 in Undiscovered Country, sorry. And I'm not a big Star Trek fan. I don't hate it. I'm just not a huge fan. And Star Trek 2, though, is a classic. The Wrath of Khan is absolutely the best Star Trek movie ever made. If you're going to argue with me, don't, because it's just true. It's a fact. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a huge Star Trek fan. I don't usually watch a lot of Star Trek. It's not that I hate it or I think there's anything wrong with it. It's just there are other sci-fi and other universes that I prefer over Star Trek. There's just some other universes that I would prefer to spend my time in. It's not anything against Star Trek itself. It's just other worlds I like. That's all. That's what I watched. As far as what I listened to, if you care, I didn't listen to anything specific this week. I was all over the map. Had no one specific feel or album that I listened to. Just a general mix of metal. That'll be my week on the channel. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Hope you come back. Remember, secret to Zen. Read books, pet dogs, listen to metal. I'll see you soon.